Hello, welcome to Watan Al Karama News Channel. It is 9 p.m. our time for top stories, and we start with latest developments in Libya. Parliament Speaker Council Agila Saleh Guaider discussed with Prime Minister Abdullah Thani and Interim Minister Brigadier General Designate Mohammed Al Fakhiri and Head of the Department of Criminal Investigation in Benghazi Salah Al Huwaidi in Al Bayda the difficulties facing acts of criminal investigation in Benghazi. Al Huwaidi noted that the Minister of the Interior pledged to the advancement of the Department of Criminal Investigation and issued a decision to move the subordination of Department of Criminal Investigation to directly follow the interim ministry. Guaider and Thani pledged to implement those promises. Guaider also hailed efforts exerted by the Department of Criminal Investigation in the light of the difficult conditions experienced by the country. Parliament postponed the session that was scheduled to be held from today to Tuesday to the lack of quorum required for the completion of the hearing session. Media advisor to Parliament Speaker Fathi Al-Mariami noted that the presidency of Parliament, represented by Parliament Speaker Agila Saleh Guaider and the second deputy Ahmed Houma, and a number of deputies arrived at the headquarters of the Parliament. He pointed out that tomorrow's meeting will be held if a quorum of Parliament members is complete. Dialogue Committee member Tawfiq Al-Shahibi, who withdrew the dialogue, said that the UN envoy to Libya, Martin Kobler, had informed him he would like to hold a new round of dialogue but without opening the debate in the draft. Al-Shahibi condemned this round as long as the draft is debatable, adding that this initiative is no longer valid after Kobler rejecting discussing the latest draft put forward by UN before his departure, stressing that his position has not changed from the dialogue since his withdrawal. The New York Times estimated the number of militants of the terrorist Daesh group in Libya by about 2,000 terrorists. The newspaper noted that they are concentrating in Sirte and in Nufaliya city. According to the newspaper, most of the leaders of the terrorist group didn't have Libyan nationality, and that most of them are Iraqis, Saudis, Egyptians, Tunisians, and Sudanese. The newspaper reported that the terrorist group is putting a plan for Libya to be a new base for it in case of the escalation of attacks on its base in Iraq and Syria. The New York Times pointed out that the new goal of the group in Libya would be controlling the city of Ashdabia. And still Libya, a spokesman for the interim minister Tariq Kharraz stressed that the terrorist Daesh group announced that the Sirte will be its new capital as a successor of the Syrian city of Raqqa. Kharraz noted that the group raised the frequency or the rate of reception of foreign fighters in the city in the recent period, noting that the receipt of information of the arrival of a number of militants from Iraq across the Mediterranean coming from the Turkish border areas. He also noted that the refugees asylum to Sirte came as a result of strikes by the international coalition in addition to Russian strikes in Syria and Iraq. United Nations envoy to Libya Martin Kobler met with the Arab League Secretary General Nabil Al-Arabi to support the signing of the Libyan political agreement as soon as possible. Kobler said in a tweet that he stressed the need for action to counter the terrorist Daesh group. Kobler further said that the Libyan parties are expected to agree on forming a national unity government before the end of this year. And about the reaction of the Arab League, Deputy Arab League Secretary General Ambassador Ahmed bin Halli headed a delegation to Algeria to take part in the 7th ministerial meeting of the country's neighboring Syria. Bin Halli expressed the hope to reach a solution to the Libyan crisis at the meeting of the neighboring countries tomorrow, stressing the importance of reaching a solution to this crisis by forming a national unity government in order to start this transitional period in Libya. The foreign ministers of Egypt, Tunisia, Sudan, Algeria, Chad, Nigeria, and a number of international organizations will participate in the meeting tomorrow. On to Saudi Arabia, 3 Saudi border soldiers were killed after exchanging fire with enemy elements trying to cross the border from Yemen to attack 2 watchtowers. Saudi Arabia's official spy news agency said today the attack occurred in the Harath district of Jizan. The spy said Saudi Arabia has been fighting Houthi forces in Yemen for 8 months and had led a coalition of Arab states in a military campaign to drive the group from the capital Sana'a. Several dozen soldiers from the Kingdom the kingdom have been killed in clashes along the country's long-ranged border with Yemen. At least 5,700 Yemenis have been killed since March in a civil war that has pitted supporters of the government backed by Saudi-led coalition against forces to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh and Houthi militia allied to Iran. Russian jets bombed targets in northern Syria today. Video uploaded to social media purported to show. Video uploaded by the Revolutionary Command Council in Hama showed a huge plume of smoke rising after an explosion. A man of camera says Russian Air Forces strike northern Hama suburbs and smoke rises today. Air Forces still overhead. The British-based monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, reported 5 Russian airstrikes targeting Al-Latim on its website. In a second video uploaded by the Syrian Civil Defense Group, civil defense workers and civilians are seen scrambling over rubble and searching for survivors in the immediate aftermath of an airstrike in Douma city, a suburb of Damascus. A second strike exploded immediately in front of searchers. A third video, said to be shot in Ariha city in Idlib, showed devastation said to have been caused by Russian airstrikes. A rescue worker with the Civil Defense Service, which operates in the rebel-held areas, said that bodies of 31 people had been identified, with 12 more awaiting identification. And now to the climate summit. World leaders launch an ambitious attempt today to hold back Earth's rising temperatures, with French President François Hollande saying the world was at breaking point in the fighting against global warming. Some 150 heads of state and government, including U.S. President Barack Obama and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, urged each other to find common cause in 2 weeks of bargaining to steer the global economy away from its dependence on fossil fuels. They arrived at United Nations climate change talks in Paris, accompanied by high expectations and armed with promises to act. After decades of struggling negotiations and the failure of a summit in Copenhagen 6 years ago, some form of a landmark agreement appears all but assured by mid-December. Over the next 2 weeks, negotiators will hammer out the strongest international climate pact yet. The deal will mark a mountainous step in the often frustrating quest for global agreement, albeit one that on its own will not be enough to prevent the Earth's temperatures from rising past damaging the should. And now we will talk about the migration crisis. Turkish authorities rounded up some 1,300 migrants today that they said were planning to sail to Greece from hideouts near the scheduled Aegean beaches and forced hours after striking a deal with the European Union on stemming refugees flows. Turkish gendarmes apprehended hundreds of Syrians, Iraqis, Iranians and Afghans and 3 human traffickers near the town of Avicek in Kanalak province, Coast Guard officials told today. The officials said that in the largest operation of its kind in recent months, the migrants were sent to repatriation center where some could face deportation. Turkish Prime Minister Davutoğlu struck a deal with EU leaders to prevent migrants from traveling to Europe in return for €3 billion in cash, a deal on visas and renewed talks on joining 28-nation bloc. A record of 500,000 people fleeing for civil war in Syria have traveled through Turkey and risked their lives to reach Greece in rickety boats this year, their first stop in Europe before traveling north. My audience, that is the wrap-up of our top stories for today. For much more, you can check our website www.watanilkarama.tv. Thanks very much for being with us. My greeting, Rانيا البليدى.